Good evening. Welcome to Inside City Hall for Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. I'm Errol Lewis. We have only 30 days to go until Inauguration Day, and trying to pave the way to a smooth transition, Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani met with Mayor Eric Adams at Gracie Mansion earlier today. It marks the first meeting between the two former rivals since Mamdani's victory last month. Here to talk about the meetings, the transition, and much more is Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to be back.
So you had this meeting. Was this your first time speaking with Eric Adams since Election Day?
Since the Election Day, this is the first time meeting him in person. We'd spoken on the phone, but this was just meeting in person, myself, my chief of staff, my first deputy mayor, and the same for himself, his chief of staff, his first deputy mayor. And it was for a little more than an hour, and it focused on the importance of a smooth transition for New Yorkers.
How is the transition going?
It's going well, and I have to say that I appreciate the fact that Mayor Adams has made his team available for hours as we negotiate both the logistical aspects of a transition and also ensuring that from December 31st to January 1st, that New Yorkers can expect the same city services being delivered no matter who the mayor is.
Have you talked with other mayors, former mayors? I'm thinking of Bill de Blasio. I think we've seen you with him, but Mike Bloomberg, Rudy Giuliani?
I haven't spoken to Rudy Giuliani, but I did speak to former Mayor Mike Bloomberg during the general election, and that was a conversation where we spoke just as much about management as about increasing parkland space and also about the formation and the structure of the bullpen in City Hall itself.
And they all have very different styles, but is there a sort of a through line? Does any of it sort of track? Are they all kind of getting you ready for the same job?
Well, I think it is all getting me ready for the same job. It's also introducing me to the different styles that each mayor has actually taken. And the thing that comes back to it, no matter who I'm speaking to, is the importance of a good team around you. And I have already made the first two appointments of our transition in my chief of staff and my first deputy mayor. And to me, it's an example of the kind of team that we're going to build, the mixture of a fluency with the internal workings of city government and the imagination and the ambition necessary to transform that city government to serve working class New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs.
How deep do you plan to get into sort of personnel decisions? Mayor Eric Adams was famous for, putting people pretty far down in the bureaucracy. He had a very clear vision of where he wanted every person to end up.
I don't think it's going to get to that depth, but it is going to be to the level of picking the people who will be leading our agencies, our commissioners, our directors, and then empowering them to actually do their jobs. Because oftentimes you see that if you are micromanaging someone, you will never actually let them do the work that they were hired to do. You have to hire a team and then trust that team to actually get to work.
Your meeting was at Gracie Mansion today. Are you any closer to making a decision about whether you're going to live there?
Now you sound like my landlord. No, not yet at a decision point, but I did appreciate having it at Gracie, and I've been there a few times visiting both Mayor Adams but also Mayor de Blasio, and this was a meeting where we had in the dining room, the six of us.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's almost not a choice, right? I mean, the amount of security, you travel with a security detail now, what you would have to do just to go to the corner to get a loaf of bread in your current neighborhood is going to be just something you don't necessarily want to put everybody through all the time. Right?
Going to Duane Reade on the corner is a different experience now.
Yeah. Are you going to hold a traditional inauguration on the steps of City Hall?
So we are in the process of finalizing the location, the timing of the inauguration, but I'm very excited to have it be an inauguration where we bring New Yorkers into it. It's not just one that they can watch on TV, but how to actually ensure they can be a part of it.
Either on that day or shortly after that, something that's going to end up on your desk is a call from the city council to raise their salary, saying that they haven't had a raise in something like 10 years or something like that. Generally, we'll put that aside. Maybe they'll give you legislation soon, maybe not. I suspect it'll be there on the first day. But what generally do you think about the council's salary, the mayor's salary? Is it in line with where you think it should be?
I can tell you, Errol, that my focus has more been on the salaries of working people across the 5 boroughs and how we can ensure that those are salaries where they can afford to live in this city. I will, of course, consider anything that the council does. I look forward to working with the council. My focus from now until January 1st and then beyond is on working New Yorkers and delivering for them.
You think you can make it on the mayor's salary?
I think I'll be okay.
Okay, good. The New York Times has an article about the fact that the city's public schools are deeply racially segregated and have been for a long, long time. This comes at the same time as Trump is taking steps to sort of unravel attempts at diversity. What's your sense of what you're going to do and when you're going to do it as far as taking steps in that direction?
This is a long-standing issue in our city. We have the most segregated school system in the United States of America. And it's a system where we are not only seeing that as a crisis, but also the fact that now for the 9th consecutive year, more than 100,000 of our students are homeless. I think we have reached 140,000 by last count. And so there are a number of proposals that have been put forward. I think a few of them, especially from the School Diversity Advisory Group in the previous administration, start to get to the heart of how we can resolve this, because what we have to ensure is that every single child in our city is receiving an excellent public school education. And one of the things that we've put forward as a set of proposal is how to hire more teachers so that we can fulfill the class size mandate. And we've put together a proposal of the course that would take someone from the community to the classroom.
Oops.
Sorry about that.
Keep going.
No use crying over spilled water, as they say. And it is something that would hire 1,000 additional teachers on an annual basis. And this would be something that would assist New Yorkers who are currently in high school in subsidizing their tuition so long as they become a teacher for a set number of years, as well as New Yorkers who are looking to transfer their careers in adulthood to becoming a teacher. We need all of these New Yorkers and more to actually be in our classrooms.
Well, but the diversity question is in some ways different, right? It's not just a resource question. There were people who were saying, we have these resources, we just don't necessarily want admissions to happen in such a way that we don't control it, right? So that there are various gates and people are steered away from certain schools, or there's a G&T test, or there's a test that you can prep for, meaning you can sort of buy your way into certain kind of learning situations.
And I think that the key of this is we have to bring to an end the stories I've heard from many parents who tell me that they live exactly where they do in New York City so they can access a high-quality public school education. We have to make sure that no matter where you live, you are going to get that high level of education, and that's going to be the mandate for our work.
Have you heard any recommendations about personnel or policy from the 17 different committees that are working on your transition?
So today was actually the first committee meeting of youth and education. I look forward to being in close touch with the co-chairs of our transition as we get those policy and personnel recommendations. We have 16 other committees that will be meeting. And what so excites me about this is that these are New Yorkers who have a combination of both being at the forefront of when government has worked and the forefront of when community has had to step up because government has failed.
What's your sense of Chancellor Ramos? Have you met with her?
I've met with Chancellor Ramos. I've appreciated the work that she's done. And like everyone within the Adams administration, I'll assess her and everyone else on the basis of the work they've done, not on that fact of who appointed them.
Right. So it's possible she might stay? A lot of parents
It's possible for her. It's possible, frankly, for anyone who's working the admin, because what we're going to bring is a lens to excellence, not a lens to who they know.
We are a couple of weeks removed from that meeting that you had with President Trump, that remarkable meeting. Have you had any follow-up conversations with the White House since then?
I've spoken briefly with the president since then, and I've always kept it a conversation that's focused on the welfare of New Yorkers and the fact that New Yorkers are still struggling under a cost of living crisis. Even though it's been a few years since it was the focus of national headlines, it continues to be a focus for New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs.
When you spoke with him, was it about sort of ICE matters? Was it about things that, you know, we're all wondering what's going to happen from the White House?
You know, the conversation that we had was prior to the recent raid, the attempted raid that we saw at Canal Street. And it was a conversation where I both communicated my condolences about the multiple National Guardsmen who were attacked and the one who then later lost their life to that horrific attack, and the focus on what we can actually do to build more housing here in New York City and the importance of serving New Yorkers' greatest need in what is pricing them out, which is the cost of housing. Yeah,
his eyes really seem to light up about that, and that is probably a good sign. Let me ask you some more about the ICE raids.
Please.
They arrested a number of people who were trying to block ICE from going out and actually enacting a raid. What's going to happen after January 1st when the NYPD is your NYPD? Are they going to continue to, say, clear the streets and help ICE do their work?
I think we're going to make it very clear that the NYPD is not assisting ICE in their actions. And I've said, even directly to the president, frankly, that these raids are cruel and inhumane, and they do nothing to actually serve the interests of public safety. And while so much of the focus has been on the attempted raid at Canal Street, we know that ICE's actions extend far beyond that in New York City. You know, recently, a father and his 6-year-old son were detained. His son went to an elementary school in my district in Astoria, Wansheen, and we still do not know where they are. And this has been part of the transformation of sites that used to be areas of routine immigration check-in, like 26 Federal Plaza, making them instead places where families are detained and deported even when a child is as young as 6 years old.
In a case like that, are you in a position to sort of contact the White House and just ask to cut through the bureaucracy and fix that particular case?
I will always make the case directly. And the fact of the matter is we deserve a mayor who understands their responsibility is to every person who calls the city home, and that includes the more than 3 million immigrant New Yorkers who do so. And I look forward to being that mayor.
On a different topic, Governor Hochul drew the wrath of some environmentalists and some residents over this proposed underwater gas pipeline that would go out near Staten Island and out to the Rockaways. Do you plan to weigh in on that?
Look,
I think you're on the record as opposing it.
I'm on the record as opposing any new fossil fuel construction, and it's part of a commitment to taking on the climate crisis.
And in a case like that, I mean, there's litigation, there's people who are really going to be taking sides. So as mayor, your voice will really carry pretty far in that conversation. Do you plan to be part of that conversation?
I think I'll always make my thoughts clear as I have done now and will continue to do so. And I also look forward to the working relationship that I have with the governor, which is one that has been focused on the affordability crisis and how to deliver for New Yorkers.
Has that been part of the conversation?
Not as yet. No, the focus has been more on universal child care and the affordability agenda that I ran on.
Later in tonight's show, I'm going to be talking with the author of a report about the looming federal cuts that are going to harm and even cripple a lot of nonprofit organizations, some of which provide really vital services. Along the way, though, the report notes that the city currently owes more than $1 billion in unpaid invoices going back to 2022 to various nonprofits here in the city. Is clearing that backlog going to be a priority for you?
Absolutely. And I think that if we want to be honest about our criticisms of other levels of government, we also have to own up to what city government can and should have been doing for a long time. And this report of estimating more than $1 billion in backlog payments, in some ways it is news, in other ways it's a continuation of a long-running story. And it's time for us to actually take this seriously, because oftentimes these are the nonprofits on the front lines of doing the most critical work in this city, and we are making that work more difficult by virtue of a lack of importance being placed on prompt payments.
The transition committees that you have, which is hundreds of people, they're looking at tens of thousands of resumes.
70,000 now.
Realistically, they're not going to necessarily look, you know, sort of at each piece of paper or each, you know, digital resume that's been submitted. What's the criteria going to be, though? What kind of criteria are they using to try and winnow it down to something manageable?
So we're actually already using the portal in search of specific sets of applicants who have checked off parts of their own experience or their own interests. And it will continue to be used not only by these 17 committees, the more than 400 New Yorkers who are on them, but also extending into the early months of the administration. And the key part here is we have to demystify government in all of its work. We have to ensure that how you get a job in city government is based on the work that you have done, that you could do, not on who you know. One of the best hiring decisions I ever made was hiring my then and now Chief of Staff, L. Bisgard Church, when I won my assembly race, and I did so through an open application process. We didn't know each other beforehand. I saw her application, I interviewed her, and I was so impressed that I made one of the best decisions I ever have, which is now someone who continues to be a partner in the work of delivering for New Yorkers.
Nobody steered her to you, or vice versa?
No.
Oh, very interesting. On the subject of protest, you said that you hope to rally with workers like the Starbucks employees that you were standing with the other day. What happens, though, when it's city workers who are picketing you for better pay or working conditions?
Well, then that means I've already had an opportunity to meet with them, because so often what we see is that a picket is the result of a failure to take a negotiation seriously. And those Starbucks workers who were outside their store, it wasn't the first time they were making their demands clear to management. It was after months of a lack of interest. And I think the core issue here, we're talking about a CEO, Brian Nickel, who made $96 million for 4 months of work last year. The ratio between his income and that of a barista is 6,666. And still, they will not give regular and predictable schedules to their Starbucks workers, to the extent that DCWP just won a settlement of close to $30 million because of Starbucks violating so many city laws.
You'll be in a position to not just wait online, but to sort of call as the mayor of New York and make these kind of considerations known, right?
And I look forward to doing so, to make it very clear that here in New York City, we stand with workers' fights for the basic dignity.
Last question. Penn Station is set to undergo a massive transformation. Do you support any of the plans on the table? Do you think that maybe Madison Square Garden should be moved?
I have to be honest with you, I'm not as familiar with the specifics of the different plans, but that is one example of what I'm going to get familiar with over these next 30 days.
Okay, we'll let you get back to it. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming by. Great talking with you.
Pleasure.
All right, we're going to take a short break now. When we come back, we'll bring you some analysis about the mayor-elect's transition to City Hall. Still ahead, the lethal military boat strikes in the Caribbean near Venezuela took the spotlight during President Trump's cabinet meeting today. We'll bring you a report from the White House later in the show. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
Spectrum TV, isn't that only live TV?
No, it's only all my favorite streaming apps with live TV.
Okay.
It's only all included at no extra cost, and that's the magic of math. Will this be on the test? Sure, why not?
It's only one simple payment for all our TV. We gotta simplify and win. Winning is equally important.
If not, more so.
Yeah!
Only Spectrum TV, fixed TV.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of, they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning. You done with the sports section?
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. You just heard from Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani on a number of topics, including his ongoing conversations with President Trump and his meeting with Mayor Adams. Joining me now to break down the conversation is our Bernadette Hogan and Bobby Kuza. Good to see both of you. What did you make of the conversation?
Well, first of all, he made news saying that he kept up the conversation with President Donald Trump after having that audience with the president in the Oval Office, and it went better than anybody expected. One thing, though, that he said he brought up was expressing his condolences for the death of the 20-year-old National Guard soldier who died after that attack in Washington, D.C. Now, this will be an important point because Mamdani has had to prove to the president, as well as many New Yorkers, that he will be a pro-law enforcement mayor. And making that call and specifically talking about that topic caught my ear because, again, New York City is one of those cities that Trump previously had threatened to send in national troops to. The president has since called off that order after meeting with Mamdani. But again, that could end up coming up again.
And he said that another thing he talked to Trump about was what they can do to build more housing, which, I mean, it's so interesting that this seems to be, you know, a point of common ground with him and Trump. Trump is obviously a real estate guy, and he seems really interested in this idea of making it easier to build more housing in New York City. But you asked the right question when he said that he had spoken with Trump again, which was, did you bring up the ICE raids? And he said that the conversation took place before the ICE raid on Canal Street, I believe.
Right.
And so that was not something that came up, but that's something he's going to have to wrestle with, right? Because obviously, you know, he has said that he has brought up to Trump that these are cruel and inhumane. But if we continue to see, you know, the kind of thing we saw over the weekend where you have New Yorkers obstructing ICE and it becomes, you know, this whole thing, then is that going to backfire and prompt the federal government to crack down even harder?
And on that point, that's exactly what Governor Kathy Hochul's office is trying to prevent. She has been in close contact with these activist groups and some nonprofits like the New York Immigration Coalition and others that, you know, their members or they are active at these protests. And the governor's office doesn't want that to be an overreaction and cause attention by the federal government that could possibly either up the ante or flood the zone in the 5 boroughs.
Well, yeah, I don't know how persuasive she was. I saw the public advocate, Jumaane Williams, out there saying on camera, we encourage everybody to come out whenever there's any kind of warning that ICE is preparing to engage in a raid.
Sure, and you know, just the idea of protests and how the activism conversation will continue and whether or not Mayor-elect Mamdani will continue that once he becomes mayor officially. You know, he was standing outside, I was with him just yesterday, at a Park Slope Starbucks. And one of the questions was, you know, when are you going to stop showing up to protests and do something about it? Of course, he said, once I'm the mayor. But still, I mean, he has a history of activism in the past. You know, we've all seen the videos. I was covering him up in Albany when Tom Homan, the border czar, was up in Albany, and Mamdani was, you know, yelling at him as he was leaving. So that will be another interesting interplay as to whether or not the mayor himself, once Mamdani enters City Hall, will he also be a focal point at these protests?
Yeah, it's a real interesting question. You know, as an activist, you're used to fighting the system. As mayor, you are the system.
Right, especially when you're dealing with these unions and negotiating these contracts, which also came up. I mean, it's clear, too, from the interview that Mamdani intends to do things differently. I mean, he said they haven't settled on the inauguration details, including the location, which, you know, these are traditionally done on the, you know, outside of City Hall. We'll see if he does something maybe a little bit different. He made a comment about wanting to include more everyday New Yorkers. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. And then he says he still hasn't decided whether he's going to live at Gracie Mansion, right? Which, I mean, like you said, it is very hard to envision a scenario where he stays in his rent-stabilized apartment in Astoria, not least because it makes things very complicated when you're trying to get around and there's a security detail, you know, outside your apartment building. The neighbors probably aren't going to appreciate that.
His neighbors would start a petition to have him thrown out of the building. I mean, it is extremely inconvenient, your comings and goings. I mean, we see what he goes through just to have him come up into the studio here. Somebody gets here 20 minutes early. They're doing a security sweep. Can he come in this elevator? Can he go in that elevator? It's not as easy as you would think.
Yeah, and then the first thing you talked about was his meeting with Mayor Adams today, which by all accounts was, you know, cordial. He talked about how they talked about how to make the transition go smoothly. But I think the most interesting thing is how long it took for this meeting to happen. I was going back and looking at previous transitions. In 2013, when Bill de Blasio took over, and he very much ran on an anti-Mayor Bloomberg platform, they met the morning after the election.
That. They went to a diner or something.
They were in City Hall and talking about, you know, how this is going to work. And those guys didn't particularly like each other, right? And then 2021 was a little different because Adams and de Blasio were allies. But at the time, de Blasio said their staffs are talking every hour of every day, and they had spoken. Totally different this time, although their staffs have been speaking, to be clear. And actually, I think we have a soundbite from Mayor Adams earlier today where he was talking about, you know, what initiatives should be continued and what's going to be different under Mamdani's administration.
And he can make the determination on what projects he wants to continue. Every mayor brings their pet projects, and what I must do is show what we have accomplished and turn over documents so he could determine if he wants to continue or not.
Yeah, and of course he has said, you know, he said this before, that in particular trash containerization and the City of Yes are two initiatives that he wants to continue as mayor. And of course he's kept on Jessica Tisch as the police commissioner. But yeah, I mean, these two guys, Mayor Adams and Zohran Mamdani, don't love each other. And even in the statement today that was put out by his spokesman, the deputy mayor, said that Mayor Adams felt an obligation to meet with Mamdani, as if he was, you know, the hand was forced in order to actually get together and talk about the transition.
It's a small and maybe cosmetic thing, but they didn't do a picture together, right? We know that the meeting happened, but there was no spray, there was no photo, even released by City Hall.
That's another thing, Errol. Actually, I was told by sources who said that actually Adams's photo detail were told not to come to the meeting, which, you know, Mamdani, we all know, travels with a whole entourage of videographers and photographers, and he's good on social media. We haven't seen anything from their side, but I was told specifically that the City Hall photographers were told not to show up for that meeting today.
Seems kind of petty. I mean, continuity of government is everybody's business, regardless of how you feel about your successor. Right?
And, you know, the other thing, too, is, you know, Adams and Mamdani did have a good relationship before Mamdani's hat was even thrown in the ring to challenge him for the job. Remember with the free bus program, Mamdani, or actually was that the, that was a different thing. That was the taxi drivers, right?
Yes.
The taxi cab issue. Mamdani was able to get support from Adams, and he took a photo with him in City Hall, and he said that allyship was something that helped get it over the top, considering the mayor's voice in Albany, whether it's Adams, whether it's de Blasio, it still carries a lot of weight with elected members.
There are a number of different issues that I brought up with him that are going to be kind of thorny. Desegregating the public schools. We saw Bill de Blasio first try to avoid the issue, then kind of really grab it and move it forward. And a lot of those efforts came to grief.
Yeah, and you know, he's talked about tackling that head on. You know, he has talked before about hiring 1,000 teachers and his incentives and the sort of things he's going to. I mean, he also talked about taking on this issue of nonprofits not getting paid on time by the city, which goes back years. And many mayors have tried to address this problem, including Mayor Adams, and haven't really seemed to resolve it entirely. He also asked him about this issue that has come up at the city council with passing a law to increase council members' salaries and the mayor's salary, and he didn't really want to talk about it, right? He kind of pivoted and talked about how he doesn't want to talk about their salaries. He wants to talk about people's salaries who are struggling with affordability, which is what, you know, this is what he often does, bringing it back to
the council members, right? I don't think they're willing to wait much longer on this. They have a very clear point of view on this. And he thinks that his salary as mayor will be fine, but they certainly don't share that belief.
Right, but I mean, the optics of him coming into City Hall and the first action he takes is on legislation to give himself a pay raise. How does that square with the conversation about affordability for other New Yorkers, not just himself?
We shall see. Thanks very much. Great talking with the both of you. We are going to take a short break now, and when we come back, the Trump administration strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean are facing renewed scrutiny. We'll explain why in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matters on your smart TV and connected devices, streaming live 24/7, plus on-demand weather forecast to help you stay prepared. It's all there as you step outside with the Spectrum News mobile app, keeping you informed and in the know throughout your day. Spectrum News, free with your Spectrum subscription, exclusively for Spectrum customers, now available on your favorite devices.
It's only a hike. It's only made possible by Spectrum Business connecting healthcare providers of all sizes. Like hospitals relying on the Spectrum Fiber broadband network with industry-leading reliability. Practices keeping patient data safe with advanced security. Pharmacies accessing records in the cloud without fail. It's tailored connectivity solutions built for life-changing moments. It's only a hike. It's only everything. Spectrum Business.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time.
And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard.
At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan.
Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York 1 to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood. Because our city never stops moving.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories. But first, stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. The Trump administration is facing increased scrutiny over military strikes that it has been conducting on alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth now says that he did not see survivors from the first strike on September 2nd, 2 men who were killed in a follow-up strike that critics say likely violated international law. All of this comes as the president has vowed to expand his attacks on targets on land. Spectrum News national political reporter Taylor Popolars joins us now from the White House with the very latest. Good evening, Taylor.
Good to be with you, Errol. This consumed much of a cabinet meeting that President Trump hosted today, and both the president and the defense secretary commented on and were asked questions about this story. There's been a lot of reporting over the last few days and a slight shifting in the narrative from the Trump administration. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Tuesday he left the room after the military conducted this initial strike on an alleged drug smuggling boat on September 2nd and was not present when the U.S. carried out a follow-up strike to kill 2 survivors clinging to the wreckage.
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand because the thing was on fire. It was exploded and fire and smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war. This is what you in the press don't understand.
Hegseth defended Navy Admiral Frank Bradley, who oversaw the September strikes, which are drawing scrutiny after the Washington Post reported that Hegseth gave a verbal order, quote, to kill everybody on board, which Hegseth denies.
Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat, and eliminated the threat. And it was the right call. We have his back.
President Donald Trump Tuesday claimed he didn't know about the second strike, but that he stood by Bradley and Hegseth.
Pete didn't know about second attack having to do with 2 people, and I guess Pete would have to speak to it. I can say this. I want those boats taken out.
Some legal experts say a strike on survivors clinging to a boat could qualify as a war crime.
International law says that you cannot simply target individuals who are unable to fight, who pose no threat.
The strikes themselves are controversial because the administration is treating the alleged drug smugglers as enemy combatants. The president has ordered nearly 24 attacks on the suspected drug boats since September. At least 83 people have been killed. Trump said Tuesday he is inching closer to ordering strikes on land in places like Venezuela.
It's much easier, and we know the routes they take. We know everything about them. We know where they live. We know where the bad ones live. And we're going to start that very soon, too.
And he claimed multiple countries could be targeted if they make and sell illegal drugs to the U.S.
Anybody that's doing that and selling it into our country is subject to attack.
Now, at one point during this cabinet meeting, Secretary Hegseth said, quote, we're just getting started when it comes to striking these boats. And he, of course, had the president's endorsement, as you heard. But at the same time, Errol, there are bipartisan congressional investigations unfolding, looking at this specific follow-up strike and the broader conversation about the legal grounds the Trump administration is using to justify all of these attacks. Errol?
Okay, thanks, Taylor. It is time now for a break. Coming up, as the Trump administration seeks to accelerate its mass deportation agenda, 8 immigration judges in New York were fired yesterday. We'll explain why in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
In Focus with Cheryl Wills, a weekly show discussing decisions and potential solutions for issues making an impact in your community and your city. If it's important to New Yorkers, then it's being talked about here. In Focus with Cheryl Wills, Sunday mornings at 10:30 on New York One.
It's only a slice. It's only made possible by Spectrum, connecting businesses of all sizes, like small businesses, instantly serving up orders and inventory on the Spectrum Fiber broadband network. And factories, seamlessly connecting to farmers in the field with tailored solutions that always deliver. It's only a slice. It's only everything. Get your business free fiber-powered internet forever. Call to find out how.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times.
So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is, my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jackamek, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. The Trump administration has fired 8 immigration judges here in the city who all worked at the immigration court's offices at 26 Federal Plaza. The site has become the epicenter of migrant arrests and protests. Our Ayanna Harry joins me now with the details. Good evening, Ayanna.
Good evening, Errol. This is the latest chapter of turmoil from inside 26 Federal Plaza. 8 immigration judges were fired. That brings the number up to 14 immigration judges at 26 Federal Plaza let go so far during the second Trump administration. Now, the judges that were let go this week include the assistant chief immigration judge. So that number is according to the National Association of Immigration Judges Union. The union telling New York One a large number of judges have also left the courthouse voluntarily. Over the last few months, New York One cameras have spent time on the 12th floor of 26 Federal Plaza, one of the city's immigration courts. And this has really become a flashpoint in the Trump administration's efforts to increase deportations. As for the fired judges, we did reach out to the Department of Justice to learn more about why they were let go. The DOJ told us the department does not comment publicly about personnel decisions, but there is a real concern that these judges may have been fired for being perceived as being too lenient.
And what the Trump administration is trying to do is rig the system against the people who are presenting themselves, seeking immigration relief, following the laws of the land and going to immigration court. This is pretty much saying that if you're not going to be a political football for the Trump administration, they're going to terminate you, which then puts further pressure on the current judges to feel that pressure to actually deliver on what they want, which is just straight up deportations and undermining the rule of law.
And we've seen tension over how federal immigration is enforced in New York City really simmer over the last few days, including over the weekend. Not too far from 26 Federal Plaza, protesters were arrested outside of a lower Manhattan parking garage where it appeared ICE agents might have been staging ahead of a large-scale operation. Earlier in the show, Errol, we heard Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani tell you that he's going to make very clear under his administration that the NYPD is not cooperating with ICE agents.
Yeah, one thing for our viewers, just so everybody's clear, these judges, these are not like folks in black robes, what are called Article III judges who have lifetime tenure or maybe were approved by the Senate and so forth. They're basically administrators within the Department of Justice.
They're administrators, and their role, their job is really to apply the law to the different cases that come before them. It's interesting, one of the judges that was fired earlier this year was actually an immigrant herself. She came to the United States from Spain. She's a naturalized citizen. And so she was disappointed to lose that role because of the personal experience that she brought to this position. But you're correct, these are not lifetime appointments. And as we see, the DOJ does have the ability to remove these judges really with very little notice.
Right. And it's also worth emphasizing that despite the fact that you have ICE agents there with, guns and masks and body armor on and so forth, these are civil cases. These are administrative cases. These People have not committed crimes. Being out of status, being subject to deportation even, is not a criminal offense. It means that your paperwork is out of order, you've committed a civil violation, and there can be severe consequences, including deportation.
Right, and many of the people who are showing up to 26 Federal Plaza, they are, in fact, following the law. They have been given a case. There are certain guidelines that are set as they continue applying for asylum, and they are showing up to court to comply with that case and to try and get that asylum and to try and get on a path to having some sort of legal residency. So yes, that is correct, Errol.
And even before these firings, I mean, there's a shortage. There's a nationwide shortage of these judges that even predates the Trump administration, right? I mean, they just don't have enough people to handle the backlog of folks who want to have their cases heard.
And that's why there is a real question at this moment about what's going to happen next inside of 26 Federal Plaza when you have judges being fired. But there's also an impetus to have even more deportation cases heard. It's just unclear how this is all going to work out, who will be there to actually hear these cases, how soon will the Trump administration be able to hire new judges. These are all unanswered questions at this moment.
Okay, thanks very much, Ayanna. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, a new report finds that our city's nonprofit organizations are scaling back or ending services amid federal funding cuts. I'll talk it over with an expert from the Center for an Urban Future. Stay with us.
After 30 years of forecasting for New York, I've learned it takes a dedicated team to cover all the weather our city has to offer.
I'm so honored to be a meteorologist here at New York One because as a Brooklyn kid, this is the station that I grew up watching. Morning, noon, or night, our team is here to bring you accurate forecasts you can count on, from severe weather updates to our weather on the ones. Watch the New York One weather experts on your TV and on the go with the Spectrum News app.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything. Movies, series, sports, reality, news.
Here's a look at today's top stories.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
And even more of your favorites with live TV. Stream across your devices and enjoy anywhere.
See you later.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. A new report finds that nonprofit organizations in our city have significantly scaled back or even ended services as a result of federal funding cuts by the Trump administration. The report is by the Center for an Urban Future, and it's called New York City's Safety Net on the Brink, and it highlights dozens of nonprofit organizations, including the Food Bank for New York City, which received 10 million fewer pounds of food this year, despite a rise in visits to food pantries. The report says that the worst is yet to come because nonprofits are expected to face even deeper federal cuts over the next 2 years. Joining me now to talk more about all of this is Eli Dvorkin. He is the editorial and policy director of the Center for an Urban Future. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to be back, Errol. I wish I was the bearer of better news this time.
Well, yeah, this is pretty grim. What kind of cuts are we seeing so far? I mean, I gave one example, but there are others.
Yeah, we've seen really two things in our report. One is that right away we're seeing cuts that, frankly, I think a lot of policymakers in the city haven't realized are already happening. And, you know, part of it is, look, the flood the zone strategy that the president has enacted over these past 11 months has been really effective. I mean, we've talked about everything from surprise ICE raids to attacks on our universities, canceling federal infrastructure projects. But what we found in this report is arguably the most devastating impacts from the federal government over these past 11 months have been on dismantling New York City's social safety net. And I would say two key findings. One, the impact is already being felt. Organizations have cut staff. They have canceled or suspended programs. They have reduced the number of services that they're offering. They are beginning to get into a real defensive crouch to prepare for even steeper cuts to come. And frankly, that's the second side of the coin, is that despite the fact that we're already seeing these cuts, I think some of the cuts to food insecurity have been the most draconian so far. And, imagine being in the position of a program manager having to call up, family that you've been providing food with on a weekly basis and saying, sorry, we don't have any this week. But what we really saw is that even worse cuts are right on the horizon. We're talking about billions of dollars in federal funding, nearly a third of the budget of many of the social services organizations that form the backbone of New York City safety net.
Yeah, that was really quite striking, that there are organizations, I didn't realize that they were so dependent on federal funding. So the Chinese American Planning Council gets $224 million from the federal government. That's 82% of its budget. University Settlement, a great settlement house up in East Harlem, 22% of its budget, $12 million, comes from federal sources. Are other organizations picking up the slack, or are these just straight cuts that the federal government is just not going to see replaced?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, the reality is that, organizations are already struggling to cover the full cost of delivering services with the contracts that they get from the city and the state. I mean, many of those contracts pay 70 cents on the dollar at best. They have to fundraise privately just to make up the difference in terms of providing those contractually obligated services. So as it is, without these federal cuts, nonprofits are constantly trying to raise private dollars to cover the gap in the services that the city contracts them to provide. Well, now that problem is getting a lot worse. So most organizations told us, look, we're facing budget cuts that will result in the reduction of services and the reduction of staffing levels. And even with, some efforts to replace some of those funds, they are really afraid this time, Errol. I mean, what we heard from many of these organizations is this is not a drill. This time is different. We've heard in the past about, oh, well, maybe there are going to be cuts to SNAP or Medicaid, but those programs benefit many, many Americans in red states too. But what we're seeing now is that actually this is happening. This is real. And frankly, over the next 18 months, it's going to get worse.
And so you're suggesting that the state and local government may have to pick up some of the slack. You also suggest something that I raised with the mayor-elect just a few minutes ago, which is that the city could, at a minimum, pay out the money that it owes, because a lot of these organizations were already under financial stress because the city has contracted for services, asked the organizations to provide the services, said that they were going to pay them, and they're collectively owed $1 billion at this point.
Correct. Even more than that. I mean, that's just from, I think, 7 agencies that contract with human services nonprofits. Look, I mean, for this research, for this report, supported by a grant from Trinity Church NYC, we were able to speak to about 40 different human services nonprofits. They support immigrants and older adults. They create supportive housing for veterans and older adults with disabilities. They are providing food to families who need it. And as you mentioned before, the number of New Yorkers using food pantries on a daily basis has doubled since 2019. But those organizations also told us, look, there are some things that the city and the state can do, even if they can't make up for the full shortfall that we're facing. One of those things absolutely is that the city can actually get out of the way, can cut the red tape that not only is a thorn in the side for human services nonprofits, it costs them millions and millions of dollars every year in compliance, auditing, the paperwork, the fact that organizations are reporting the same numbers to the city and the state for multiple contracts over and over again. So one clear recommendation that the mayor can actually do is not only to pay nonprofits on time, they do have this incredibly painful backlog of unpaid bills, but also cut the red tape that actually costs nonprofits money that the city can actually affect without having to, to take action from the federal government or the state.
When the city contracts with nonprofit agencies, we report on it quite a lot, and it's clear that they're basically a government contractor. They're akin to, a company that's going to, say, pave a road on behalf of the government or something like that. Is it a similar relationship with the federal government? Does the federal government see itself as contracting with these organizations, or is there some other kind of competitive process or some other kind of mechanism?
Yeah, it's a little complex, Errol. I mean, in some cases, nonprofits have already lost grants that they had directly with federal agencies. Grants that would support, for instance, research on how to improve healthcare outcomes for NYCHA residents. Well, the federal government didn't value that. That contract is gone. We saw that in more, acute terms, in terms of, saying, hey, the food that you would promise through the USDA, you're not going to get that delivery next month. Those are, in many cases, direct relationships. But the federal government also supports nonprofits in New York City through dollars that flow through the state and through other city agencies. So the reality is that it's hard to actually trace all of the impact that those federal dollars have as they flow through the city and the state into our social services system. That's partly why the damage that we see over the next year or so on the precipice of a major, crisis for our social safety net. It's partly why it's so difficult to untangle the impacts, because those dollars flow through multiple city and state agencies to get to New York.
You're talking about some problems now, but you also talk about sort of the ticking time bomb that is out there, which is that many of the cuts are not scheduled to take effect until after the midterm elections next November.
Exactly right. I mean, the worst is absolutely yet to come. Our report documents billions of dollars in future cuts that the city will be facing in the next 12 to 18 months. And we have to get prepared for those cuts now, Errol. I mean, part of what we're seeing is actually the cruelty is really in the bureaucracy. Not all of this are just direct budget cuts. It's creating new layers of rules and regulations that will make it harder for New Yorkers to re-enroll in benefits that they're eligible for. That will have the impact of kicking, hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers off of SNAP, off of Medicaid. Ultimately, the impact isn't just on those New Yorkers directly, but it's also on the organizations that serve them. Those organizations are going to face major holes in their budget because those are services that are only funded by those federal dollars today.
Is there some grand design behind this that you can detect? When we hear from political people, from the Democrats, for example, they always say, well, the Republicans want these cuts so that they can give a big tax break to their wealthy donors. That sounds like political talk. Is there some kind of philosophical larger battle being fought out here?
Well, look, I'm a policy wonk. I'm not a politician. And when I look at the data, it's really clear, Errol. I mean, when you see if impacts in other states of cuts to these programs or increasing things like work requirements, it has a very clear impact on saving the federal government and the state money because people simply aren't able to take advantage of those programs. But does it reduce poverty? Does it help more folks get on the path to the middle class? Does it create a stronger, more equitable economy? The data is actually really clear. It does none of those things. So the reality is, if the only goal here is to take dollars away from the most vulnerable people and put them somewhere else, those policies are effective as designed, But if the goal is to actually reduce poverty, expand economic opportunity, help more New Yorkers move into the middle class and achieve family-sustaining wages and live a life of dignity, well, these cuts are not a way to achieve that.
Okay. Everybody going into the new government in January should be aware of these things. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Great talking with you.
Thanks so much, Errol.
All right. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, new fare gates are being installed at subway stations across the 5 boroughs as the MTA tests new ways to stop fare evasion. Stay with us. Here's the deal. People need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 on Spectrum News New York 1. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
There's an international travel plan with Spectrum that was an additional $10 a month as opposed to paying a ridiculous amount per day for roaming fees. This literally felt like my old phone carrier was reaching their hand into my wallet and just helping themselves to some of my cash. I like having no surprises when it comes to my cell phone bill. And with Spectrum, that's been the case. So it saved me a ton of money.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Installation has begun on new European-style subway fare gates. 20 subway stations across the 5 boroughs are expected to unveil them in the coming weeks. They are meant to prevent fare evasion while also allowing for luggage and wheelchair access. New York One Transit reporter Samantha Liebman has more details in this report.
Behind a cordoned-off area at the 3rd Avenue 138th Street subway station are new modern fare gates, part of an MTA pilot. They can also be spotted inside a construction site at the Port Authority.
We're in the midst of a competition amongst 4 really impressive international companies that are making prototype fare gates for us to install in the system. We're getting as many of them installed as we can over the next few weeks.
These are the 4 prototypes. In addition to the 3rd Avenue 138th Street and Port Authority stations, the 4th Avenue Pacific Street entrance to Atlantic Barclays Center is also getting new fare arrays.
I think to stop the number of people that are getting on the subway where they open the gate and 30 people run through and pay nothing.
The new fare gates would also replace that emergency exit. They would facilitate emergency evacuations as well as be wide enough for wheelchairs to get through. And the doors would prevent literal turnstile jumping and would require pretty much crawling on the floor to go under. Some riders see other positives besides fare collection.
Maybe this is a better way to just even the playing field for everybody.
Not have confrontations with police.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, these fare gates have reduced fare evasion in other cities where they've been used. Some riders think they're not 100% foolproof.
Jumping them in Paris too. A person would come behind you when you enter and quickly push through.
These gates can detect that, what's called piggybacking, and the doors can close quickly or set off an alarm. The MTA is going to see which one works best.
Riders and the public will have an opportunity to see how they work before we see how we move forward.
Some of the other 20 stations which will see new fare gates include Union Square, Delancey Street, Essex, Nostrand Avenue, Crown Heights, Utica Avenue, Jackson Heights, Roosevelt Avenue, and Forest Hill, 71st Avenue. Those sources say the installation may go a little bit into next year. Meanwhile, another 20 are expected by the end of 2026 and 150 stations by 2029. At the Port Authority station, Samantha Liebman, New York One.
That's going to do it for tonight's show. Thanks so much for watching and have a great evening. We'll see you next time inside City Hall.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning.
We've done with the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything.
Love you, brother. Be careful.
Movies.
I've got this condition where I don't feel pain.
You're a superhero.
No.
Series.
There was another murder in the building.
Sports. Reality.
Here's to a summer you'll never forget.
News.
Here's a look at today's top story.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
Even more of your favorites with live TV.
Welcome into First Take.
Stream across your devices and watch anywhere. At home or out and about. It's the entertainment experience you've been waiting for. Streaming apps included at no extra cost.
Almost got that, pal. Get a good look.
With live TV and on demand. All together, all in one place for you to enjoy.